Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Bonus Points podcast. I am your host, Joe Garrett, as always being joined by Ollie Guy.
Oi oi.
I've said that intro enough now that it's become a thing where the words don't mean anything. It's got like a flow and it just kind of comes out.
You could have done something Halloween themed.
Oh, is this? Oh yeah. Hello. No,
the bonus points.
No, we don't want to scare anyone too much. One of my favourite things is when we're unpacking shopping at the moment, like when we get it delivered, is they always have like Halloween stuff on it, and I just pretend to be like really scared by it. Like we got some like pasta with like some bats on, and I picked up and I just screamed and dropped it. And I was like, "You could have warned me!"
You're turning into your dad.
Oh, I know, it's awful. And amazing, in case you end up watching this, Dad. Yeah. I love you. Right. Yeah, so the reason we're talking about Halloween stuff is, well, one, it's close to Halloween as we're uploading this, and we're also doing a spooky game, which was Ollie's choice. So do you want to kind of set up what game we have been playing for the last couple of weeks?
I will set it up with the Wikipedia entry as always. Resident Evil. This is the remake I'm talking about. So from now on, every time we say it, we're talking about the remake.
Can every time you say Resident Evil, can you do it like the menu person?
Yeah.
When you
Resident Evil is a survival horror video game developed by Capcom, released for the GameCube in 2002. It is a remake of the 1996 PlayStation game and the first installment in the Resident Evil video game series. This story is good as well. They've nailed it with this. The story takes place in 1998 near the fictional Midwestern town of Raccoon City, where a series of bizarre murders have taken place. The player takes control of Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine, STARS agent sent in by the city to investigate the murder. Didn't know that.
Wait, is that you finding that out now?
Yeah, I guess that's what happened. That's kind of how they end up in the field at the beginning. I never really thought about it.
Yeah, well, they're in like a helicopter and then like crashes, doesn't it? And
then,
does it? Yeah, it does. And there's dogs chasing them and stuff. But people watching the video podcast, crashed. You're watching it all right now, so you'll know better than us.
It starts with it already crashed, right? You don't see it crash.
I swear there's a bit in the helicopter. Or maybe I'm thinking of the ending when they're off in a helicopter. Yeah, maybe. Possibly. Maybe. Anyway, that stuff doesn't matter. Spoilers for later on. The story isn't the draw of this game. The story is there. It's not the reason why anyone is playing this. So I kind of mentioned this a little bit to you before, saying that this was kind of going to be almost just like the Resident Evil podcast. Like, we're going to deep dive into this game in particular, because obviously each Resident Evil game is very different, kind of famously so. There's like different camps that like the different styles of Resident Evil games. But like Resident Evil's probably your favorite franchise, would you say?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think this is a franchise that I've sort of grown up with, which I know is like, we always talk about nostalgia, but the fact that it's still around now and they're still making new things now is like pretty cool. So,
and like good new things as well, which is it's rare to have like a franchise that is consistently, obviously there's down ones, but the fact that like Resident Evil 1, like the original, was like pretty revolutionary, and then like now they're still making like top quality games. Like, you're quite lucky that this is a franchise that you're really into.
It is crazy to me though that like it's kind of like Capcom's experimental series, considering it's their flagship. Like, you know how Nintendo has like Kirby, when they do something new, they make it a Kirby game? Yeah. Capcom kind of do that at Resident Evil, and I always think like that's such a big risk every single time that they stick Resident Evil's name on it.
Is it a bit of a less of a risk? Because like the Resident Evil name has so much weight. They could do an experiment that isn't a hit, but like they're gonna make their money back.
That's true.
People are gonna buy anything with their name on. Obviously they don't want to sully the name. But I don't know how much they care about that. With all of the spin-offs and the weird multiplayer games, like I don't think they're precious with the Resident Evil name.
I think there's in the whole series, I think there's 27 games.
Okay.
But obviously the main line there's 8 or maybe 9, depending on if you count one of them. But yeah, it's crazy, huge series. I've not played all of them either, so
okay.
I've played all the numbered ones. I just haven't played like all the hundreds of spin-offs.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm assuming like some of the multiplayer ones and stuff you've probably skipped over.
Yeah, they're not that great. So
yeah, I'd assume so. So what is that? Yeah, I just kind of want to find out, like, before we go into this game, like, so what is it about these games in particular? Because they are all over the place. There's some that are these, very traditional survival game where it's, limited ammo and resources and exploring an area like this one. And then there are the kind of the more action, kind of just straight up ones. Like, but you seem to love them like almost equally. So like, what is the through line that makes you love these games?
So I don't want to sound like a wimp. I don't want to get judged by anyone, but I like these games because they're action games, but you don't shoot people. Yeah. So that's the first thing I like about them is like, I'm fighting a threat and it's not a man. Like it's something different.
I'm the same. So like, I'd rather shoot, I like Halo. I like shooting aliens rather, rather than people.
So that was the first thing that drew me in. And then I think it was Resident Evil 4. When I first played it, I was like, I've never seen any, because Resident Evil 4 was the first one where I kind of had an understanding of games a bit more because I was a more early teenager, and that was the first game that I played where I was like, I've never seen a game like this in my life. And then that kind of put in the first point of love, and then I kind of spread out from there. I kind of appreciate each one for its own merits. Like a lot of people are like, oh, this isn't a Resident Evil game because you don't have a key, and it's like, well, it is, it's just different, and like that's fine. And I appreciate them all on their own merits. Like, the action ones are good because they're good at making action games, and the puzzle ones are good because they're good at making puzzle games. And they can be good at both. You don't have to be on one or the other. So
did you not play the ones before 4?
I went back and played them.
Okay, and you played the original PlayStation ones of 1 and 2?
I did play them when I was a kid, and I really loved them, but I was rubbish at them. Yeah. I didn't, you couldn't imagine a 6-year-old, 7-year-old kid playing something like this. It wasn't like I wasn't like terrified. I don't think they're scary games. That's another thing. I don't know if that makes me an outlier. I don't think the Resident Evil games are scary at all. They're like action games, and the enemies just don't carry guns.
I think probably the original ones back in the day. I mean, like we spoke about it in the Doom podcast. Like Doom is like not scary at all now, but like it, people were scared of it back in the day, and I feel like with the 3D games were quite new, and I think especially like the first ones, like the graphics with the pre-rendered backgrounds, it looked so good compared to other games at the time, because they were cheating almost with like.
Maybe I was just like too young to understand to be scared of it. Yeah, and then by the time I kind of went back to them, I was already kind of over it. So I never found them that scary.
But you're not scared of like the like you weren't scared of Village or 7 or anything at all, were you? No. Whereas I was. No. Not like you. I completed them. I was fine. But like
the other thing is as well, it's like the Resident Evil characters are so capable. Like it's like, oh yeah, they are in an awful situation, but they're also borderline superhuman. So like you're going to be able to get out of it. Like they can take many hits. They can dish out attacks. Like they're not like what did we play recently where I was just like the main character? Oh, I was talking about Last of Us, where I was like, most horror game characters can't really do anything. So in that case, it was like Joel was pretty strong. But like the Resident Evil characters are like that. Like they're all tough, Yeah. So, which is also another reason why I like it, is because I like the characters, because they're like, they're almost like the Avengers, Like they're not, like, this is going to sound crazy, but like Solid Snake, he has like bad habits, and like he's not a perfect guy. Whereas the Resident Evil cast are like immaculate. Like
they have flaws. Like
but the Resident Evil cast don't. They're just like basically superheroes.
They don't have flaws, personalities.
No. To be fair, they've developed personalities over the years, but not in this one.
I can't wait again. We'll get into the story later. But before we kind of go straight into this game in particular, like, was there anything else against kind of like Resident Evil in particular? We're currently doing a series at the moment of our top 20 games of all time. Very like spoilers, Resident Evil might show up maybe once, maybe twice, maybe more times. Who knows? You're going to have to watch them to find out. So these are super beloved to you, and we probably aren't going to do another Resident Evil game just because, we're trying to vary up what we're doing. So is there kind of anything else you want to say to like wave the RE flag?
Which is Resident Evil 6 is unfairly maligned. Like, it's really not that bad. Like, for this show, we've played some bad games, and Resident Evil 6 does not come close. So if you're on the fence about trying it, and you heard it was bad, just play it. It's really not that bad. Like, I would say it's not even the worst Resident Evil game.
Oh, okay, because I didn't play it, because I heard how bad the reviews are. And it wasn't that like, it got a 6 from IGN, I won't play it. It was like, oh no, hearing the criticism of what they said about it, I was like, that doesn't sound fun. So it wasn't like, just because I heard it wasn't good, I skipped it.
If you're playing in co-op, it's an absolute blast. It's like an action film that lasts 20 hours. Like, It's so much fun. But playing it on your own, not so much.
Yeah, I guess that's what it would be. I mean, I did 5 co-op, but then, and I heard about 6. I kind of skipped it. Anyway, let's get into this one. So this is, as you said, a remake of the original one. How faithful of a remake is it?
Not particularly.
Okay.
It's about 60-70% the same.
So what so like the layout of the mansion, has that changed?
Yeah, that's changed a bit. Like some of the stories changed a bit because obviously the remake came out after 2 and 3, so they could like retcon it.
Okay.
The graphics have obviously changed a lot.
Yeah.
Like the mood even changed a lot. The Resident Evil 1 mansion was really bright in the PS1 game.
Oh, really? Okay.
Like almost like the room you're sitting in. Every room was like that. It wasn't really dark.
Yeah.
A lot of the enemies are new. It's not really the same as the original, to be honest. So, except for the fact that it takes place in a mansion, and the mansion is roughly the same shape.
Okay.
Like I don't want to go too deep into it, but the story beats are different. Like there's a certain monster who lives in the basement. It's not even in the original, so like it is quite different.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I didn't know whether, because obviously like it's like it feels like this game could exist on PlayStation 1, like with worse graphics. It doesn't feel like there's anything technically that it's doing. But I guess it's just the graphics are amazing. like we're playing like the HD version of it. And so I mean obviously you could compare it to games that were released, recently, but remember this was like a GameCube game originally. Like so obviously it's got the pre-rendered backgrounds. We'll get into kind of what they do to gameplay a little bit later on. But basically the backgrounds are essentially a picture. But then they do really good like layering of like effects over it, like the candles, the flames will go. They'll have like lightning flashing and like waterfalls. So they do a pretty good job of disguising the fact that it's a picture. And then also I guess that because it's not really taking up much processing power to do the backdrops, like the characters are ridiculously good as well for a GameCube game.
This game came out 21 years ago.
Yeah.
Is it 2022? Oh, it's 2022, isn't it? It came out 20 years ago. So, I mean, it looks... they also lost the original files, so they haven't really even up-res this because they couldn't. Whereas Resident Evil 0, they have up-resed it, which is also made on the same engine with the same pre-rendered backgrounds. But they had the files, so they've kind of up-res that one. Like, it looks a lot better. But this one still looks good, considering, like, how old it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was playing it on like big TV, all blown up, and there are a few in particular bits that don't look as good, but in general, like it looks amazing. Doing that style that is, it's just not necessarily needed anymore because like the downsides are quite severe. So can I go and set up? So you caught me playing on easy mode.
Very easy.
I just chose I didn't know it was very easy. I thought I just chose like one.
Can I guess why you did that? Because you said, "Oh no, I'm going to tell you why." But can I guess?
Yeah, do it.
Did you play for ages without saving it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then there's more to it. Okay, so I've written down like what my first impressions of the game was. So first there was the opening cutscenes, and like I saw the dialogue and the way the characters talk and the acting, and I was like, okay, it's going to be like this.
Yeah.
And then I went over my first door, and it did the door load. So every time you transition from one room to another, like you see the door very slowly open and you go through. And you wouldn't think it's the end of the world, but it's not like a normal game where it's like you're outside and then when you go inside there's a load. It's like this game is split up by small rooms, so you're doing that alone. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that from the old ones. I thought this game was past that. And then I got into that room and I saw that there was the typewriter, which is what you use to save your game, but you need to use like ink cartridges to save. And I was like, you do. It's still got that as well. So I had that moment. I was like, well, I've not done anything yet, so I won't bother saving. And then and then I started picking stuff up and I saw my inventory and I had like 8 slots. And I was like, oh, that's not enough. and then I went through and I had my first enemy encounter. You see a zombie and it's almost like a planned moment. And I was like, oh, there's a zombie, but I got a gun. So I killed the zombie. And then I tried to keep exploring. They were like, oh, maybe I should go back to Barry. And I was like, okay, I'll go back to Barry. Then I go back to Barry. And then that zombie, which I killed, obviously I probably wasn't meant to kill it because it plays a cutscene as if that zombie was chasing me. And then there's a cutscene where it's killed. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I went and explored to the other side of the mansion. And then I got cornered by a zombie immediately, like ambushed me. And I was in a courtyard. And I went to shoot it. but I ran out of ammo because I'd wasted my ammo killing a zombie that didn't matter, and then I got killed by that zombie, and then it put me back to the main menu, and it was like start new game, and I was like,
right,
yeah, I don't like. I felt like the game didn't like. I didn't trust with that opening. I didn't trust the developers, like the fact that there was like don't give me the gun yet. Or have a thing saying run away. Like the fact that they make me waste my ammo and then it appears again, and the fact I hadn't saved and stuff, I put it to easy. I probably didn't need to, but I was like,
no, you didn't need to at all.
Yeah, but that
especially
was
because
my first
it
impression.
kicks you back to the menu. So if you'd skip the cutscenes and play back to where you were, it probably would have taken about a minute and a half.
Yeah, it didn't take long to be. Again, I knew what I was doing then. I didn't shoot the zombie the second time. I save my ammo that next time.
Oh my god!
But to me, obviously I lost something playing it on easy. Like a certain level of intensity. The inventory management probably mattered less. But I don't feel like I regret. I think if I was going to replay it, I'd definitely do it on normal. But I don't think it, for what I wanted out of the game, I don't think it hurt my experience too much.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. I can't really comment on that. For me, part of the fun is getting into a jam.
Yeah.
And getting like, how am I going to get around this scenario? Because, I know where there's enemies because I've run past them and I've left them on purpose. And now I've run out of bullets and I wish I hadn't. For me, that's part of the fun of the game.
I see that. I realised at the time I missed that. It seems the big thing easy mode does is it just gives, when there would be a herb. There would just be 4.
Right.
Which, if anything, it was more difficult and stressful because I've only got 8 slots. And I got my gun, I got my ammo, I got 2 keys. Like, I don't have room for all these. It was more stressful, like, going with my little wheelbarrow, bringing all these herbs back to my storage box. It was...
So, if I remember correctly, because I played it on Once Again mode, which is New Game Plus.
Yeah.
So I had some costumes. That's the only thing that carries over. If I remember correctly, doesn't it say something like, you like hiking or you like walking, and you have to choose. That's how you choose difficulty.
What type of person are you to choose what difficulty
there's so
level?
many difficulty levels because there's Jill is easy and then Chris is harder, and then both of them also have the walking or hiking difficulty as well. So for example, all the doors that you lockpicked, Chris doesn't have a lockpick, so he would have to find a key for every single door.
Yeah, but he's got he's got a lighter.
He's got a lighter, but he also doesn't start with a gun, so you might have been better off.
Well, see, that's the way I feel the game should be. Like, I feel they designed it for Chris, and then they added, Jill could start with a gun, but just they didn't consider that. Obviously, they give me a gun and a knife at the beginning. There's a zombie there. I know it's Resident. I'm going to shoot. There's surely that's what 80% of players do, and then it does the cutscene. I feel like if they did any play testing, they would have nipped that in the bud, or they were running under budget or time restraints. They made the game quite quick, and so it made me not trust what the game's going to do in the future. So I was like, you know what? I don't want to be frustrated playing through this. I want to experience it and see it. But if stuff like this is going to happen, I'm just going to get too annoyed. So I'd rather take the difficulty factor out of it.
Maybe. I mean, this remake was made in a year. So that's one thing. But also, they probably had a bit of a tricky thing of being how do we balance it for, keeping it as hard as it used to be? The PS1 version is probably harder than this. And also modernising it for 2002 for new audiences. But anyway, we got a comment from someone about the opening, which is very, very relevant to what you're saying. So Helen Wells wrote in and says, how come if you play as Jill, you have a gun, but you still get saved by Barry at the beginning? But if you're Chris, you just have a knife and then you're on your own. How times have changed.
If you're Chris, does Barry not save you?
Do you know what? I've never done it as Chris, so I don't know.
Oh, really? So with Chris, you only have 6 inventory slots, which I just... Because I messaged you saying I'm playing the game, whatever, but no spoilers, but how do you get the extra inventory slots? Because it's really difficult right now, and you're you don't expand it. And if you think about it, because you have your gun... Or you might have a few guns. You're generally going to have at least 2 guns. You might have ammo. I know you said you can just use the ammo in your gun, but you never know what you're going to be going up against. But the thing that got me is things like your ink ribbons, ink cartridges to save. I know you can put them in the storage box, but that takes up room. And then any key or puzzle item that takes up room. Which is kind of annoying because I get the idea, limited inventory. So you're do I take healing or ammo? Or do I take the grenade launcher or do I leave it back? I get that because that's a fun strategy puzzle of you kind of planning ahead. But when it's oh, do I take the key? Because otherwise I'm going to have to backtrack loads if I run into the door where I need it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that should be separate from the fun inventory game.
And in some of the Resident Evil games, it is.
Yeah.
It is separate. Like Resident Evil 4, you don't have your keys in you have them in your like chest. Like which you just have with you.
But that seems like the way to do it. Like that's where I have the problem, was the fact that all your key items are there. And I did run into situations where I go to an area and I'm like, oh, I need this book or this key or whatever. I just got to go back and then come back again, which doesn't sound like the end of the world. And even if it's not very far, but if there's like 5 doors I got to go through, that's like 10 doors there and back with that slow loading time. Like that's where it becomes a chore.
The doors are a nightmare. And I don't really understand them, because at one point later on in the game, one of the doors breaks and that scene is just gone. So it's like, you don't even need the doors to do that. Like, you can load, because the door breaks, you can just run straight to the next rooms. You don't even need to have the doors.
Maybe that's in one specific area where they could fit it all in. Maybe it has a longer load getting into that whole area or something.
I think the PS1 needed the doors, but I don't know if they needed the doors anymore.
It'd be nicer there, because obviously I assume you played on Xbox Series X with our blazing fast SSDs. I wish it was because obviously I think it plays the same speed no matter what. I wish it was just like a normal loading screen. So for us, the door just went boop, boop, like open. Yeah. It wouldn't have the same tension, but that would be lovely.
Yeah, yeah. So how many times, just while we're on this easy difficulty, how many times did you save it? It tells you at the end.
Oh, do you want me to go get my stats?
Yeah, I just want to know the saves. Okay.
I mean, I'll tell you, I ended up with like 30 ink cartridges or whatever.
Okay, so you weren't saving that often?
No, I was just on easy. I think they just throw them at you.
Okay. Well, actually, no, it doesn't matter. The thing I was going to say anyway is that I'm quite well versed in this game, and I'm not bad at it, and I saved 28 times. Okay. So you're meant to be saving a lot and going back to the room. And so basically for me, I don't know if this is just how everyone plays the game or if it's just me, but what I was doing was going to the save room, looking at my map, being like, okay, there's a locked door there that I've not tried, and then kind of planning a little excursion. Yeah. Trying the door, okay, it didn't work, run back to the safe room, reload, look at my map again and be like, okay, now I'm going to go to that one over there. And I kind of feel like that might be lost on very easy, because you could just absolutely blow everything away.
No, that's how I played. That is what I did, because I never stopped, because you still get hurt quite a lot. I think the main thing is they give you more resources, which, as I explained, isn't as helpful as it sounds, because the difficulty is the resources you're carrying rather than the resources you have locked away in your storage chest. And so that is what I would do. I'd have whichever safe room is close as my home base, and then I would look at the map and go there and weigh up the odds of there being a boss in that room or something. Because obviously I didn't know what was coming. I see a big double door, and I was like, I'm gonna pop back and grab that grenade launcher for this bit.
Yeah,
just in case.
For me, that's the fun of it. So for me, it's I was playing the other day and I got caught in 2 boss fights in a row, and I got through them. And I came out with full health. That's because I had to use everything I was carrying. But I was I'm so glad I thought to pick up all of these things, because and also when you play through it a few times, you have a bit of an edge. Obviously, I couldn't remember everything. I had to use a guide at one point, but I can remember enough to be the V jolt. I was like, hang on a minute, this is ringing a bell.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's cool about the game is that it has a lot of branching paths that I don't think you might not have even realised.
So I realised at the end, I had a cutscene, and then it was one of 12 cutscenes or something. So I realised, it's a multiple ending kind of thing. I saved Chris, and that seemed optional, because it never really told me to do that or anything. What other major ones are there?
So there's the whole V-Jolt thing, because you were saying about mixing the V-Jolt.
Yeah. I
didn't do that. I just went and fought it, and I had a big boss fight against the plant. So that was quite cool.
Oh, I thought you had to do that. I just assumed, because it's...
No. Nope. You can... I think there's a door that's on a bookcase or something, and it slides open, and then you can run in, and there's
I did that. Yeah, there's red book. Oh, yeah. No, it's don't the books make a naked lady.
Yeah. Well, it's a Renaissance painting. It's not a Rudy
I know. I know. It's just quite funny that's the one they chose.
And then there's a double door near there that when you run through it locks behind you, and there's a boss fight. So
I did that. So I saw the plant, but then I panicked. I ran back and I did the
you did the roots.
Yeah. I put the stuff on the roots to get it.
No. I just killed him. Obviously, your teammate that you find, I can't remember his name, like Richard.
The one that's like dying.
Yeah, he can just die, and then you don't get the help in the boss fight. You don't get the shotgun that he's carrying.
Okay.
Did Barry live in yours?
Yes, I think so.
There's a bit where it's like, will you give Barry his gun back?
Yeah. With that boss fight there. Yeah, no, I gave the gun back. Yeah, so he lived.
He can die there as well, so that's another thing. And then if you play it as Chris, you also get to play as Rebecca, who's another character you don't even see if you play as Jill. And they kind of have where you go back and forth, changing between them. She's like a medic. So it's quite cool that they have all this like different things you can do, like to go back through it again. So it's not always the same.
So Resident Evil games, they've always been really good for like New Game Plus and replayability. Does like you said about you have costumes carry over? Is there anything else? Because I guess there's no weapon upgrades, which is normally one of the big things in the game.
So it adds gaming modifiers. So you have one dangerous zombie mode, which is what you unlock after you finish it. Which is did you find the guy sitting outside with the grenade launcher?
Like on like is it on like a balcony?
He's sitting on like a balcony. Yeah. So in one dangerous zombie mode, when you open that door, he springs to life. And he's covered in grenades. If you try and shoot him, it will blow up the whole mansion.
So you just got to run from him.
And he chases you the whole time. So
that sounds horrible.
Yep. Yeah.
That's what I always hate Resident Evil games. I hate the tyrant or like all of those things.
There's also you also unlock true survival mode, which is it takes away the warping of the chests. So in the game, when you put something in a chest, you can get out any other chest. It's like a warp pipe, but they remove that for true survival mode, and also to get rid of the auto aim, so you have to manually step to aim the gun, which sounds like absolute hell.
Yeah, well, everything you're saying just sounds like they're just like So the fun in the game. So get rid of that. Get rid of the fun.
So the final mode is invisible enemy mode, which is exactly as you imagine. But the one cool little twist on it is the fact that if they're being reflected, you can see them, which I think is quite cool because there's a few places that have mirrors.
Yeah.
So,
that's actually quite useful in normal gameplay sometimes with the way the camera is. You can't see them.
Shall we talk about the elephant in the room?
Yeah, go on then. Well, I mean, I didn't know there was one. I couldn't see it.
Yeah. Well, I think more than the camera, it's the controls.
They're combined. They're related, aren't they? So did you play tank control? So you can either play tank controls, which is like forward goes forward. If you turn left and right, you just rotate on an axis and then go forward. Or what every modern game is, you push in a direction and the character will move in the direction you push. So which way did you play?
I played on modern mode. Okay. So whichever way you press on the stick is the way you're going to go. And if the camera angle changes, as long as you're holding the same direction, you won't change direction. But as soon as you move the stick, you will change.
All you're doing is you're pushing that down the end of the hallway. You got to rip that band-aid off at some point. At some point, you got to change.
Yeah. So for me, the camera angles not really a problem, and I actually think they're quite cool. Like they do a really good job of building the atmosphere. They frame important things like items you need to see will often be like at the front of the camera, and like enemies will be hidden around corners. And because of the auto aim, like you're not going to miss them as long as you can hear them. And if you press the aim button and she'll kind of turn a bit, you'll be like, okay, I'm aiming at them. But man, those controls, they have not aged well, have they?
So when you say control,
the actual
do you
running
mean,
around businesses.
Yeah, and so many times it'd be like a right angle corridor, and I'll run and I'll go around, then immediately go straight back again, like because I'm like somehow pushing the wrong way from what the game thinks and stuff.
The other thing is as well is the enhanced controls, so the new like modern ones. The game's not really balanced for them, so it actually makes it, despite what we're saying, it can actually make it quite easy because the enemies are not quick enough to grab you because they're not used to being able to like spin and like run. And
I guess within one scene, one angle, you're overpowered, but then the transitions are kind of where it mainly gets awkward. Yeah,
so I was actually watching the other day a video from this guy called Action Button on YouTube who used to work for Sony. He worked there for like 10 years. Around when Resident Evil came out, and they didn't develop Resident Evil, but it was like a huge success for them. So they were like looking at it and like trying to think about how they can mimic it. So like if you remember, Final Fantasy VII the original had quite a lot of like static camera, so you'd be running into the stuff like that. So they took the idea from Resident Evil, and then apparently, according to this guy, I don't know if this is true, is what he said, about 4 years after they started doing it, they realised that the best way to do it is to hold a button down and have you run. And then you just press left and right to turn like you're accelerating. Because then as long as you're running in a straight line, you can have the camera change as many times as you want. You're never going to get lost because you're always running. And he said that at the office, they would lament the fact that they made it the standard that you had to hold forward or whatever it is, whatever the weird control is. And they absolutely hated the fact that that's how they did it. But the side reason I'm bringing that up is because Killer 7 uses static camera angles and uses a button to be held down, and the controls are not.
Yeah, and there's no problem.
Yeah, there's no problem, which is like really weird. We've done both of these.
I think the difference, I guess, is like on Killer 7, you're always walking down an exact line, and you're not like you're not having to face a bookcase to interact with a thing and stuff. So I guess that is in Killer 7's favor for the controls.
I feel like Killer 7 is a very interesting, almost like a minimalized version of this game in that you do run around these areas and you can interact with the environment, but you can only look at things that are of interest. You don't have any like, the bath has dirty water in it.
Yeah.
You know, it's only things that are interesting you can look at, and the obviously the combat's better because you can actually aim. Yeah. I just think it's an interesting take to look at Resident Evil and Killer 7 together because...
Yeah, I guess the thing is with this, as you say, like you can, you know, to save resources or whatever, you can run past enemies, whereas on Killer 7, it almost when you're in a shooting gallery, it almost becomes like a light gun game. Like they're coming towards you, you're not dodging them. You know, you can run away, I guess, is your only option. So I guess that kind of works well.
And you have unlimited ammo in Killer 7. So
yeah. I mean, yeah, there's similarities but a lot of differences. So there's a lot of defenders for the camera, and you kind of said some of the stuff with kind of they say about like about it adding tension and like you know, like obscuring things from view and stuff. Like, do you think most of that is just like almost like a happy accident, and like, or people just like, oh, we really like the game, it is quite bad, like they're not making like the new Resident Evil game's not like that, they've decided against it. If it was so good, like why aren't they still doing it? Was it just so they could make the game look really nice back in the day, and then there was a few nice side effects? But I mean, for me, I think it wasn't worth it. Like I auto aim or not, shooting a thing off screen and I just can't see it, like that never felt good for me. Like I just found it frustrating.
I think it was a happy accident. I think it was, they were like, what can we do possibly to get this to work? Well, I guess we'll have to do it this way. But like, I think, you know, the remake especially makes the most of it. Like, it looks amazing. The way things are framed is really cool. Like, you know, there's a few camera angles that I can like, you know, distinctly remember, which you would never get with a film. You know, you'd be like, oh, I remember that one camera angle. But like, you know, when you're going down the stairs and the camera angle's off to the side and you're a bit like, what is going on here? Like, it's stuff like that that's really cool that just wouldn't work with a third-person camera. And to be honest with you, the running controls are horrible, like by today's standards. Even back then, I don't think they were all that. But I actually quite like the combat. Like, it's much more of it's not skill-based, it's much more of are you ready to have a fight? If you are, you will clear this, and if you're not, then you're going to die and you need to go back and figure it out. And I like that about it. I don't play this game to be like, oh, I'm going to go online and go on the game and get 30 headshots. Like, it just doesn't happen. It's more like, you know, top trumps is like...
I played, you know, Resident Evil 2 Remake, and I'm not loading that up going like, oh, I'm going to get, you know... But the combat's great, and it's still tense, and it's trying to do the same kind of thing, but also... It feels like the shooting is amazing, and like the way the zombies react, and I can see them, and like it can add tension by, you know, I have my camera view, but they can have just the shadow of a zombie or like a rattling window. Like they can still get the same emotions from the single frame. Like I feel like that you design the environment that way rather than, you know, like the times when like it's annoying. Like if I'm in like a big room, like a hallway, and there's a zombie, like the big room with like the big dining room table, and I'm crossing like that room, and it switches camera like 3 or 4 times when I'm switching, and I'm like, oh, there's a zombie. I'm not like, oh, what position should I run to shoot it, or should I avoid it? I'm like, let's keep running until I get a nice camera angle so I got a chance to see it. And that takes me out of like the scene in the world, because I'm just thinking about like the tech of it and like the game engine.
But there's also quite a cool thing in it where the character will know something that you don't. And I think that's quite an interesting idea, that the character can see the enemy and they know it's there, but you obviously, you know, you're almost wanting to protect them, but you can't because you don't know what's coming. But to Resident Evil Remake's credit, at least, is you very, very, very rarely get jumped. Like, you will be attacked by a zombie that is on the other side of the room.
Yeah.
Or if it is around a corner, you will be able to hear it for like a very long time before you approach it. It's not going to be like, "Wah!"
And like music cues as well. Like if you enter a room and the music's going, you're like, all right, let's get the gun out. Like, where is it?
What did you make of the enemies that had to be burned? The Crimson Heads.
Yeah, so I didn't fully realize what that mechanic was. So I thought that they came back alive. I didn't realize they came back as like this more dangerous version of themselves. So yeah, at first when they said about that burning mechanic, I was going out my way to burn them. But as we said like earlier, the inventory space is so limited, and you got 2 slots, says Jill, I need to use just for burning. And I can burn 2 zombies until I have to go back and refill my little canteen with like kerosene or whatever it is. So like, yeah, I did kind of what you mentioned to me. Like I kind of burnt the ones that were like obviously close by and in like high traffic areas where I'm passing through a lot. Then otherwise I didn't need to. And then also I was playing on easy, so it probably mattered a little bit less for me.
Yeah. And also
cool mechanic though.
Yeah, if you take their heads off as well, they won't come back.
Yeah.
So that was the other thing. That in that instance, the fixed camera is quite good because I'll be like, I know in this room I left a zombie, so then I'll go into the room and I'll open the door and I'll hear like the footsteps and I'll just stand there with my gun pointed upwards, like, oh my god! Like as soon as it gets near me, I need to get him in one go because if I don't, he'll probably kill me.
Your face is to the edge of like the scene, your camera where you are. You're like, you just need to see the nose
just there, like, oh my god! Like I like those moments. Those it's cool to have them because they are a very formidable enemy. Even when you know your way around the game like I do, they're still like, these are guys you need to look out for.
Yeah, because they're so fast and aggressive, and like you can't move and shoot, and they're hard to see, and so they're right on you. So if you're, even if you're just trying to pistol them rather than use a shotgun or something, like they're gonna hit you so much before you're able to.
Especially
to
because they
knock them
got
down.
a few attacks as well. Like the slow zombies have to kind of grab you, but these guys can like slash, and also the way that they stand up, like Resident Evil, obviously it's horror, but it's not really like paranormal. It's like science horror.
Yeah.
But the way these guys stand up, where it kind of looks like they're being pushed up by a stick, like it is quite alarming. Like I'm not going to go as far to say it's scary, but to see them like up in front of you, it's a bit like, oh god.
Yeah, no, they're really cool. I think a lot of that stuff, like I realized, like, don't be angry at me in the comments. I realized I did rob a little bit of that tension and stuff because I was on easy mode. But they were still very dangerous. Like they could have. I haven't looked up what easy mode changes, but my guess is it's mainly the amount of resources that you get.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but the fact that I have such limited inventory space and like the enemies are still dangerous, I think I still did have a lot of what you're talking about where you're really trying to plan ahead and like take just enough to survive, because you always want a few slots spare because there's nothing like worse than getting in a room and it's like, here's the key you've been looking for, and I'm like, oh, let me just go and heal my perfectly healthy body just so I can clear some space because I can't be bothered to walk back to the safe room.
They know it as well. They know it because in the finale they give you a single-use item right near the end, so that you have to go into the finale with an empty spot in your inventory because they know that people just won't have them. So that's how they get around it. So they give you like a flare that you have to use to start the boss fight in order to pick something up to finish the boss fight, because if you didn't have the flare, you'd go in with a full inventory and it'd be like, oh, I can't finish it.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if they just let you drop an item?
Well, you say that. Resident Evil 0, you can drop items on the floor. And it's really easy to lose them because you're like, I do not remember where I dropped that.
I know, but like if it's when I'm somewhere really far and it's like I want to get the key, I'm like, I can drop this single like green herb to pick it up right now. Like it's on me if I lose it. That should be like on me. Like maybe there's a thing in the engine where like leaving something, or even if it's like discard it, as an option would sometimes, I'd feel better discarding a healing item rather than using it when I'm healthy. Just mentally, it doesn't feel as bad.
I'm just like using a full herb and I've got like full health. It's just the absolute worst.
I imagine it's like you're like full of food, so you're like really like, I can't, I'm stuffed, but I got just one more little bite so I can pick up this
it's
ruby.
Only waffle fin. I think also things that maybe didn't work so well. Another one on the old herbs and that is poisoning. Did you have poisoning in easy mode?
Yeah. I get poisoned by snakes and stuff. I'd have the blue herbs.
Not necessary. Very annoying.
Yeah, because it's one of the things where it's like, because you never know what enemies you're going to be facing up against unless you've been there already. And so it's a special type of herb, and it's always like, God, is it worth, like, the amount of times I'm just carrying around a blue herb, and every time I bring up my inventory, I'm just bitterly looking at it because I'm like, I haven't even found a single poisonous enemy, and you're taking up a whole space.
Well, I think pretty much every time you come across a poisonous enemy in like the next room or the next one over, there'll be a blue herb.
Yeah.
So like I could remember that, so I wasn't carrying them around with me, but it's just annoying, isn't it? Like, especially when it's a snake, you can barely even see them.
Yeah, and they're not worth using your ammo for, so I always just left them and kept running past them. I think the moment where, as you say, when you find your mate and he wants the healing and you got to go back like quickly to the room to get the antidote for him and then bring it back. I thought that was quite cool. And then the fact that he could die and like he actually does die, they didn't cop out on that. Like, I think that's quite cool, but it could have maybe just been that single moment.
Yeah.
When you're going to get the serum or whatever.
Poison. And also the fact that the serum is in that room, but if you go into that room when you're poisoned, you can't use the serum. That's not... There's a huge medical cabinet.
I swear you have to heal yourself from that room as well at some point.
Yeah, but if you get bitten by like a snake...
Oh, so if it's not a story moment, they don't let you.
Yeah.
That's funny. I don't
because the giant spider can poison you as well.
Yeah, that happened to me as well.
I didn't fight him. I just ran around him because I was like, I don't have the ammo to do this. So I just grabbed the knife off the side. You should have called me, mate.
I had so much. I was like an arms dealer in the mansion.
I did end with a lot of pistol ammo, but to be honest, near the end, the pistol was so useless that I was just not using it. So
yeah,
that's another thing I quite like actually is like how this same environment gets more and more aggressive. Like if you think about how the mansion is towards the end compared to how it is towards the beginning, like because you kind of get to a point. It's actually when I stream over on Twitch, by the way, everyone, twitch.tv/the bonus points. I was streaming on there and I just cleaned out all of the zombies and I was like, it's like normally your game wouldn't look like this. Normally there'd be enemies everywhere, but I killed them all. But then they did start to come back as like Crimson Heads and Hunters and all that. It's quite cool how much they do with the environment.
Yeah, that's what the thing. What I always love about Prey is when you first arrive.
There we go.
It's very relevant and a pretty similar game in some of the way it's set up.
I'd say so. Yeah.
Better camera. So like one of the things I like is when you first go there.
Not
and
the way
it's
I
play it. Like the way like it's quite like just deserted. And then you find a few like the little enemies like the mimics and stuff. And then by the end, there's like this giant nightmare. There's like that coral stuff, like all this effects everywhere and everything's all blown up. Like the gradual deterioration and like the way it's gradually getting more infected. But it's the same areas that you knew from earlier on. Like I feel like that's another game that does it well.
It's so effective and I don't think really enough games take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Because like it's the areas you get to know. Especially in this game because you run through the corridor so many times. Like, you know, I couldn't remember if I hadn't just played it, but I could probably remember 90% of that mansion. I haven't played it for a couple of weeks, but I've ran through it so many times over my gameplay, which I think was like 7 hours or something. I do think the corridors.
The mansion was a level above any of the other locations. I feel like after that they get a little bit more not linear in terms of like you just go straight through, you know, in like the residency and the lab and that you are returning to places, but often it's like you have one like base and you're going and doing things. Whereas the mansion, I felt like I'm kind of more unlocking shortcuts and like different routes through areas. Whereas the other areas, it's straight much like go to a place, backtrack to the item room, go to another place, backtrack to the item room. It felt much more linear in that way. But I enjoyed when you then get another key and go back to the mansion. And you're like, my old stomping ground. Like, and I did remember my way around.
Yeah, the mansion's very much the star, isn't it? And the other things are just. I don't know exactly which ones, but not all those areas are present in the original.
Okay.
So I think obviously all the stuff with Lisa Trevor, that's all new.
Yeah.
Who is the new
horrible
boss? Horrible.
Did you read all of the information about it? So I don't.
Yeah,
I
did. Yeah.
I know we talk about all sorts of games here. I feel like I don't even want to go into like the details of it. Like it's pretty gruesome.
It's more the noise that she makes. It's just horrible.
Yeah,
horrible noise.
But like you know about her and her mum and stuff, and the way that ended up.
It's pretty dark. It's pretty dark. But you know. she's not that threatening, really. She's quite easy to run past, and
yeah,
I think she's not. She's a lot scarier. Her bark's worse than her bite, basically.
Yeah, and then there's good like foreshadowing because you can hear her very early on when you're in the mansion as well, behind the bars. I think smart. Also, the enemy under the graveyard, they're in the coffin. That was really nice because you're kind of basically it's like a coffin extended in the air with like chains, and you're putting on like these masks. Like you got to get 4 or something masks to unlock it. But every time you put one in, like a chain breaks and you can see like blood come out and it's like shaking. I'm like, God, do I really want to be unlocking this? I know I got to, but like that's a great way to build up like hype for that moment. Like the way you got to keep returning and the way you do it gradually. I thought that was a great way to build up tension.
It is a bit weird though that he just turns out to be a regular Crimson Head.
Yeah,
that you fight hundreds of.
It was a bit disappointing when it dropped, and I was like, "Oh, it's a zombie."
This is something that I've made a note of. Is that I think the game's got a weird pacing. Like even if you weren't getting stuck and you were just running through, the pacing is really weird. It's like run around the mansion for ages, then do like 3 boss fights in a row, then run around for a bit more, then do like 3 boss fights again. Like the pacing is just like it's not like you'd expect, like it doesn't ramp up. It kind of, you have a lot of downtime. It's not really a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing. Like I've written that finding the thread is not fun. Pulling it is fun and being like, oh, I can now go in here and I can do this and that. But like you spend a lot of time picking away, like, which of these red doors is the one that my key unlocks? I've got to test 8 doors to find out which one it is.
I think a lot of that was improved with I know I keep talking about it, but it's my favorite Resident Evil game, and very similar is Resident Evil 2 Remake, or how nice like their map was, and like when you see a door and it'd be like this is this door, and that would be automatically marked on your map. I found it so much nicer. I also found it very hard to I think the camera made it harder to navigate because you'd look at the map and you'd kind of be like right forward, left, right. And then you go the camera, then the camera angle switching to like switch to like a frontal view, and obviously you can work it out still, but it makes it harder to. I think was it you? I think I might have brought this up before, saying about how when people played Resident Evil 7 in VR, it was much easier for them to like learn the layout of the house.
Yeah, it was me talk about it.
Yeah, because do you want to kind of explain that? Because this is kind of the opposite.
So like when you play games in VR, and this was a Resident Evil game, so it's very relevant. You kind of learn the space a lot quicker because I think it might be because the relative size of everything is really easy to understand. I think that might be what part of your brain is like picking up.
And we used to do it in real life. Like if I go in someone's house and walk around, I don't like go back downstairs and keep going in the wrong rooms and opening closets. But in a game, you might not remember it like that perfectly.
Yeah. So in Resident Evil 7, people that played in VR barely had to use the map because they were like, oh, I know that room's upstairs and I know it takes this long to get there. I have to go up 8 steps because you're in it, you can remember it.
Yeah.
I had the same thing the other day because I've been playing a lot of Resident Evil 4 in VR. And I was like, it's so weird that I now know how big a red barrel is. Like, you see red barrels in games and like, you can't really tell. But like, I was like, if there was one in front of me, I could show you with my hand how big it would be. And I bet
it's bigger than it seems in a game. Massive. Everything seems bigger in VR. But like,
it's huge.
This game, I think it was the opposite effect where because I can't turn the camera, I've had a less sense of space. I was actually talking to someone, they just got a new car which has like the electric mirrors. Have you seen that?
No, what do you mean?
So it's like a camera. So instead of like mirrors on the side, like wing mirrors, there's just cameras on the side, and then you have a little screen on either side to see what's behind you. And they were saying like,
good enough.
Well, the thing is you can have a really wide field of view, so you can see much more.
Okay.
And then it's more aerodynamic. Sorry, getting well off topic here. But the thing that they were saying is that they don't like it because when you turn your head, you don't get any perspective shift, and it makes the whole image look flat, and you can't like judge distances or anything. And this game is obviously, everything's completely like that. It's all completely flat, and even in a normal game, moving the camera around gives you much a better sense of place and kind of the layout of something.
Did you play with the camera? Did you play in widescreen? Or did you play in 4:3? I'm pretty sure I was widescreen. Yeah, I didn't adjust anything. Yeah, when you have it in widescreen, the camera's actually zoomed in so that it can fit the whole. So the picture will slide up and down, which probably didn't help because like things that you could potentially see would be obscured by the fact that they're off the top of the TV or off the bottom.
I remember you discussing a similar thing with Onimusha, where
they did the same thing.
They zoomed in. Another game with similar.
Man, doesn't this game look so much better than Onimusha? My God.
Yeah, and the characters as well, and I mean, they're all a bit like bland and generic. Kind of, I think the faces and like a bit stiff, but like they look amazing.
Yeah. The voice acting. It's just
can we talk about that?
Not the one.
I remember asking you when we did the Undertale podcast, like, is that like the funniest game we've done, or maybe just the funniest game ever? Like, I think this might have actually made me laugh more than Undertale. Some of the cutscenes, they're so bad. They are so bad. So, this is where you normally argue that they got to be self-aware, and I say I think they're not. Do you reckon they know it?
Nope, not in this case. I mean, don't get me wrong, I quite like the cast and I like the vibe because it's weird and like funny. It's not good. Like, no one's playing this and being like, oh wow, this is like cutting edge. Like, there's the thing. I was talking to someone the other day and they were saying about the Resident Evil films. I was like, why do they keep making films of them? Have they seen the games? Like, it cannot sustain a film. Like, they're just cheesy. It's cheese, isn't it? It's absolute cheese.
But it's like so. It's so still. I mean, I should tell for the video, actually for the audio as well. Let me just play a clip of one of these cutscenes just to give an idea. Have you got
I've got a clip for you right here that I'm going to send. I have the timestamp and I've just sent it to you on Discord because I wanted you to watch it. At that timestamp, it's my favourite line. It's Barry.
Oh, is it where Wesker and they just keep saying Barry like loads?
No. This is a good one.
Barry.
Okay.
Forgive me.
No, you're not to blame. It's Umbrella and Wesker.
He's got one line.
If it meant my family, I couldn't bear turning
I can't hear what he said. He basically comes in and he goes, "Forgive me."
Yeah,
it's like the funniest thing.
But that in that cutscene later on as well, like everyone just keeps saying Barry so much. It's like Barry, and like Wesker's like, I got Barry to do this. You're like, Barry, like it's just
and like Barry is like Barry such an uncool name. Sorry if you're called Barry, but like you're never gonna be you're never gonna be an action hero with a name like Barry. But they love it in this game. And do you know what's really weird is I think that this has the best story of all the Resident Evil games.
I like that I could follow it because there wasn't any baggage, because it was like
that's why I think it's the best one.
Yeah,
you know, it exists in a vacuum. It's got a few little call outs to different things, but really just guys go to a mansion. One of the guys turns out to be a baddie and he's testing his new weapon against them and they leave. That's kind of it.
I got a question about the story, specifically with Barry, who's my favourite character.
Of course.
So there's the bit. So Barry, spoilers for Resident Evil. So he's kind of betrays you because Wesker has his family or something, and so you go in and he points a gun at you, but then you like disarm him, but then that boss shows up and then you can give the gun back to him and stuff. Yeah. So he's just betrayed you. After that cutscene, he just goes and they just never discuss it at all.
I know. I noticed that this time around.
He's going to shoot her and then she's like, disarms him. And then they like kill the boss. They're like, okay, bye. And then they meet again and he's like, haha. And like does it again. He's like, what?
I know. I noticed that this time round. So like I even went to speak to him because he's standing there. So I was like, I'll go and speak to him to like, so she can be like, what the hell are you playing at? And then he's just like, oh, this isn't the time. Gotta go and live my truth or whatever it is they're doing in this mansion.
It's so funny. And I think it's funnier because like a lot of the production values, especially for the era, are quite high. And I think that makes like there are a lot of games where you can see like old PlayStation 1 game cutscenes and it's like, you know, they didn't have any money. It's just the developers in the closet recording it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like of course it's not going to be good. But like this looks like a big production. And it's also so unbearably awful. But like, luckily it completely crosses over the so bad it's funny mark. So it's actually quite entertaining.
Have you heard the original voice acting?
I've heard
this is remade for this.
I've heard clips. Like, obviously there's the famous Jill Sandwich clip, which I now got.
Yeah.
And they have like a twist on the Jill Sandwich joke, don't they here?
Yeah.
Joke. Not meant to be a joke.
But the original is like a lot worse than this. Like I can't even. I'm not even going to do an impression of it. It's like worse than you could ever imagine how bad it is. The original,
but it's a PS1 game, and it's like that's what they were all like then. Like I think the reason why this one's surprising is like, you know, it looks better than like Metal Gear Solid. But like the voice acting is so awful.
I guess like because the PS1 had CD audio, which is like one of the first times they ever had that. So all the voice acting was new.
Yeah.
So I remember hearing a story about a guy. It was on the 8-4 Play podcasts. It was about an old it might be a PS1 game, and it had a black snowboarder in it. And the guy they got to do the voice acting, it was a black guy, so it was this guy's friend, and he was like, "So how did you get that job, like as a voice actor?" And he was like, "Well, basically, I turned up to work, and I was black, so they just said, yeah, you could do it." Like, so they just didn't have voice actors back then. He just got the job. It's so just funny. Crazy. Like, because compared to now, like the quality is.
Yeah,
you're right. It's especially noticeable because the game looks quite nice.
yeah, and there was a way like. Because the script isn't great, but it's like the delivery in like comparison. Like bits when it's obviously meant to be kind of jokey around and stuff, but it's so flat. And there's the bit near the end. I assume did you save Chris as well? Because I think you wouldn't have had this cutscene when it's like they hear a noise. I don't quite get it. So they're going on the elevator up to the roof and they hear a noise. Yeah. And then like because they always want to split up. Like Barry and Chris are like we'll stay here or something, and then like Chris is like. Ladies first to like Jill, and she's like, "Oh, Chris," and then he's like, "You got to let me have some of the glory or something." And I'm like, "Okay," but then you go up the elevator, then they just like follow you up like 20 seconds later. So I was like, I don't even know what was even meant to be going on there.
I think maybe they couldn't have 3 high polygon characters on the screen at the same time.
Yeah, they keep having to have excuses to like separate. I mean, I'm glad they did. I'm glad I didn't have to escort Barry around. To be fair,
what did you think? Because we've been absolutely dragging this game. What did you think of like the puzzle, like opening boxes, examining items?
Yeah, I really like that. So I've been playing, coincidentally, loads of point and click adventure games recently. And like this is just one of them, really. Like you take out the zombies and stuff. Like this is, going around, finding things in the environment, combining them and working out puzzles. Like this is that. Like there are some bad puzzles. There's the puzzle where there's like the big shark and there's like a sequence of things you got to do, which I think is quite cool in concept. Basically, you need to like drain some water away to kill this shark. But like all of the screens and stuff, like you can never tell what they are. It's just like a big blur of artwork and screens and stuff. And you're always just kind of clicking on them randomly to work out what they all do. And then there's the other puzzle where this is the one we both got stuck on. The one you had to look up where... Actually, I don't know if this is the one you're stuck in, but you have a jewelry box. And then like...
Oh, no, that wasn't that one. It's stupid, though. What you're about to... You are right. You can tell it.
Well, you explain it because you had to explain it to me.
You basically get a gem. There's 3 coloured gems in the mansion and they all go in different things. And they're kind of like a cartoon drawing of a gem, if you imagine.
Think of like a giant diamond or something.
Like a giant diamond. But then you find a box and it's like, there's a spherical inlay in this box. So you'd think you have to find a round item to put in it. But actually it's the giant diamond.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I think I remembered from before, that's how I was, this diamond goes in there. When I actually thought about it, I was like, that's not round. Like, unless you're putting the very top of it in, but that's pretty
No, I span around and I looked and like I didn't even have a moment to consider that was the thing to put in. I was like, I'm going to find a round thing. So
I tell you what actually triggered it in my memory was in Resident Evil 2 Remake, the new one, there's a very similar puzzle where you have a red gem and a jewelry box and you combine them.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe that's what it is, and it just worked. So
yeah. No, I actually really like the puzzles. I think they got the difficulty overall about right. Like they're never too difficult. A nice mixture of like puzzly puzzles, like ones that like look like a actual puzzle, and then like the environmental stuff. Like there's like the waterfall, and then there's like a swimming pool, and if that pool is drained or not, like the waterfall will be going there, or like if you get a battery, you can then like power an elevator to move around, like all of that kind of stuff. I always enjoyed that, like especially when you've kind of not been stuck but in the same area for a while, and then you get the thing to progress you, or you get a new key and it's like, this door and this door I can go back through. Like that's always a satisfying feeling. So yeah, I think it was kind of like a light point and click adventure game, and I really like those games.
I'm not too keen on the ones that force you to empty your inventory. Like, there's one where you have to get a bee and a hook and combine them and then put them back on the wall. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that puzzle takes place in one room. I still have to have 2 inventory slots for it.
Yeah.
It's just annoying. Like, it did not need to... It's annoying to be, like, in the room with the bee and see the hook and be like, I can't pick them both up at the same time, so
yeah.
I have to go back and empty my
I
pockets.
know the one you're talking about. Yeah, I mean that goes back to the like I think the inventory system is bad. Like I know there'll be defenders saying about that is adding the tension of it and it's important. I get it, but like it's not adding tension when you want to put a hook on a bee and you have everything you need, but you just need to go back and drop off some handgun ammo and come back and then do it. And then also where I'm like, I'm not carrying around key items with me that I might need just because like it feels like a wasted slot. Like that's slowing pace and hurting tension and adding frustration in its place.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they obviously realize that and they seem to have sorted that out in modern games. So
yeah. Cool. Okay. We got a few comments. I think we pretty much covered them.
There's because one last thing about the puzzles, just before we go on to it.
The what, sorry?
About the puzzles and the way all that works and the keys and stuff is I was watching an interview with the person who, I don't know if you've seen it, but they made the demake of Bloodborne, like a PlayStation 1 version of Bloodborne. I don't know if you've
heard about it. I've not seen it, but yeah.
So it's like fully playable, like big sections of Bloodborne. And it's not like a graphics filter. They made a game that potentially could run on a PlayStation and like has that sort of settings. And they were saying some of the changes they made, they argue they think that like personally they prefer it over the original because in like Bloodborne, if you get a key and you have it and you click on a door, it will just open. And they were saying like clunky design can kind of be satisfying in having to bring up the menu and select the key, even though it's nothing time and you know what you need to do, but there's a satisfaction in the fact that you have to do it. And I watched that interview while I was playing this game and I was like, yeah, because there is something really, even though it's so basic and you know what you're doing, it is still really satisfying. But I think most modern games, if it's in your inventory, you'll just open it. So I could kind of really see what they were saying. Although, sorry.
Go on. No. I was going to say that RE4 VR remake kind of half steps it by if you have the key, when you approach the door, the key will appear in front of you. So you have to grab it out of the air and then you physically unlock the door. So it is kind of a half step between.
But that's so much more satisfying than it just opening or just being unlocked because it's in your pocket.
Yeah.
I was just going to say the only thing that I didn't like is there was some inconsistency about how you use items. So sometimes, say, if you want to use an item with something in the environment, you'd have to open up your inventory, click on the item and say use. And then other times, if you did that, it wouldn't work. But if you clicked on the thing in the environment, it would say, this is empty. Do you want to fill it up with this? And then you would select yes. And so there was there's a time when you got to fill up like a canister of fuel or something, the thing that can't explode. And I was trying to fill it up, but it wouldn't work. I kept pressing to use it and it didn't work. But then I clicked on it and it's like, oh, do you want to use it on it? And I was like, oh, this one's doing it that way for some reason. Like there's a few little clunky things where they're adding not like intentionally adding artificial difficulty, but if someone missed that and left the room, like that could have been brutal back in the day before you were.
It's the same as if you're slightly turned the wrong way when you click on something and it's like, you can't use that now. And it's like, but I'm standing right in front of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Also, one thing we didn't mention that's new to this version is the like defensive items.
Okay.
So I guess I guess you must have used them. You had it on easy. You probably had hundreds of them.
Yeah.
Like
you
the
get
daggers and the tasers and.
Yeah. So basically, it means if you get grabbed, it automatically will be used to knock them off. Yeah, I had probably way too many of them. Made the game too easy.
Yeah, I like that addition.
I like that they didn't take up inventory space. That was nice. Yeah. Every time I go to pick something up and it's one of them, I was like, oh, phew.
The other thing is I like it's kind of a half step between like the whole melee. The newer Resident Evil games had the melee systems. And this kind of feels like that in a way, like a really early version of it, which is pretty cool.
So you get a knife in this game. Is that knife like ever usable as like a viable strategy, or is it just if you have no ammo and you're completely desperate, I guess?
Well, if you can knock an enemy over and you can stab them when they're down, so you can point your knife down and then you can finish them off when on the floor. And also you use it that one time to cut the webbing off the door.
Oh yeah.
But apart from that. But there's also people on YouTube that like finish the whole game with just a knife that are like crazy.
Yeah.
Right. Some things we've covered quite a lot of these already. Do you prefer the action games or the puzzle games of Resident Evil series?
I I prefer the ones that are in a like have large sections in a single location. Like I prefer this style. Like I'm not for the horror. Like I don't care about them being scary. Like I like the atmosphere, but like I don't want to actually be scared.
Yeah.
But I like the ones that are like this, like Resident Evil 2 remake, even like 7, like in the house. I enjoyed. I think overall I enjoyed Village more, but I didn't enjoy the locations of the Village of Village I didn't like. I always found it a bit confusing to navigate and it never felt satisfying. And then, they kind of have mini hubs, but I definitely I think prefer this style. Then again, I mean Resident Evil 4 is amazing and great in its own way, but I think I would prefer the ones like this more. Yeah.
I wonder what they're going to do with the remake.
Oh,
because
remake
people
of 4.
people are loving 7, 8, and 2. Resident Evil 3 remake is much closer to Resident Evil 4. You don't have the one location. You kind of run forward the whole time, which is fun in its own way.
Yeah. It's just preference.
Yeah, I wonder what they'll do with 4, if they'll try and make it scarier or if they'll just stick to the original.
I think they're going to tone down the campiness a bit. Like I feel like they just couldn't. Like I feel like they just couldn't. Even if they tried to do it, it would feel like it's forced in a way compared to like back in the day. Like it would feel almost like disingenuous if they were going down like that same route with like what that story was like and some of those like ridiculous moments. I just feel like with like the amazing graphics of like the modern games on the RE engine, like I feel like it just wouldn't work.
There's some of them I hope they keep. There's some silly lines I hope, like your right hand comes off. That's one of my favourite lines when he says, "My right hand's coming for you." He goes, "Your right hand comes off." And also, obviously, the bingo. Where's everyone going? Bingo. That's a great.
Is that line. With the bell going
right at the beginning? But they have in the remake, the VR version, they have cut out some of the like sexism, which is obviously I'm 100% for that, and I'm glad they have.
Yeah.
So at least they're learning and listening. So they've cut out some of that stuff. I doubt any of that will be present in the remake. The last thing I want to touch on, just before we do list it, is I really liked how the lab looked in this game. Like, all the newer Resident Evil games, the labs are always quite, like, sleek and clean.
Yeah.
And they just wouldn't look like that. Like, there's been a zombie outbreak, and this one is, like, grotty, and there's, like, pipes dripping and stuff. And I just thought it was cool. Looks good.
Yeah, and there was some cool environmental storytelling in the lab, and, like, you're finding the notes about, like, this, this scientist who's, like, he knows he's going to turn. He's trying to do everything he can to, like, save other people. And he's, like, and then you find him around the corner, the actual zombie of him. And, like, that was quite a nice personal touch.
And there's a nude zombie, isn't there?
A nude zombie?
There's a nude one.
Is there?
Yeah. You know the room with, like, you do the x-rays on the wall?
Yeah.
Like, around there somewhere, there's a completely nude zombie.
Oh, is there? I think maybe I just shot him and then just didn't even notice. I was so focused on, like, whatever I was trying to do, maybe I didn't even notice.
I was like, ooh.
Maybe on easy mode, they put clothes on because the nudity is too distracting. You'd get killed otherwise.
Along with a giant target on their heads, don't they? Okay. List?
Yeah, let's put on the list. Okay, right. So, the list is up on screen for you all. But before we dive in, we'll compare our stats. So let's do our top trumps. So highest number wins.
Okay.
So what was your play time?
7 hours, 19 minutes.
No, rubbish. Took me 11 hours, 23 minutes. I win the top trumps.
You win that one, yeah.
To be fair, I did have a lot of times of it left like on pause or like taking notes and stuff, adjusting my recording.
Yeah. Creatures dispatched. I got 96.
147.
Whoa, 147. How did there even that many what? How did you even
I don't know.
Was there even that many enemies? Did I run around 50 enemies?
I mean, I guess like I always had ammo, so maybe like I never like ran past an enemy. I always killed them.
Okay.
So,
well, speaking of ammo, do you want to ammo
God,
used?
It's gonna be so different. Yeah, do yours first.
Well, mine's 292. It's quite high.
You reckon? Mine is 420.
Ink ribbons, so saves. I saved 28 times.
Yeah, you said so. I did a 39.
39 saves.
Ink ribbons used. Yeah?
Yeah, so you saved twice. Like, you saved a lot.
Yeah, well, I had loads of ink ribbons, so I would like
just thought I'll just type away.
Well, any I would just do it for the fun of it. I would save, go to save the game. I'd save it in every slot each time, just so I had all these backups.
It was a dark and stormy night.
And then health items used.
27.
23. I actually had a lower one. I guess
I can't believe your creature's dispatch. I didn't even know there was that many enemies in the game. Maybe if you kill an enemy, another one might spawn.
Maybe.
Like if you kill a hunter, maybe one will spawn in its place.
I did once kill around the swimming pool. I killed the snakes, and then like I know
50 of them.
And then I also killed some of the birds, and I felt like they were probably avoidable. So that might be like a batch of 5 or something. Yeah, just for the fun of it. Just
not a very good vegan, are you?
Hunting season, isn't it?
Yeah. Hunting season at the Spencer Mansion. Oh, also, did you see that in Resident Evil 7? Because you know, the Resident Evil 7 is meant to be like a normal house, and obviously it's full of like puzzles and stuff.
Yeah.
There's an invoice upstairs for Spencer Building Industries or something.
Oh, like, really?
Because you're in the Spencer Mansion.
Yeah. That's funny.
Right.
Right, yeah. So we've got the list here. So this is the 25th entry that is going to be onto the list.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm curious where this is going to go for you, because like I know obviously this is such like a beloved game for you, and it's probably like along with maybe 4 one of like the most celebrated Resident Evil game. Like this is a game that comes up in like top 100 lists of all time and stuff, really high up. It's like very well thought of.
Got a very good Metacritic score at 91, which is very high.
I wonder, like, I think one of the things is like it's very easy for us now to say like, oh, the way the camera and the backgrounds are, like, you know, it's bad and it makes it harder to control. But I think that's because we now have graphics that are better than those backgrounds.
Yeah.
Whereas back in the day, like when the option was that, or for it to look like, you know, like the other games of the day, like I bet it added a lot more in terms of atmosphere and tension. And like I wonder if that was worth it more back then, you know, despite the trade-offs probably.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I'm trying to think of other games that came out in 2002. Let's quickly have a look, see what else came out. Warcraft 3. Vice City came out in 2002.
I mean, it looks a lot better than Vice City, but obviously, like,
it looks a lot better, but yeah,
it's rendering in one small room at a time. This game compared to like a city. Yeah,
Time Splitters 2 was 2002.
Okay.
I mean, it looks better than those games. Let's not pretend it doesn't. But yeah, oh, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
It looks a lot better than that game. That's funny. I mean, we were playing the HD remake as well. We do have to remember
but
that.
They lost the source files, so it is literally just the resolution that's boosted. There's nothing else.
Yeah. They don't have the original assets or anything. So, but yeah, that probably did help it a little bit. So for me, like the obvious point of comparison is Onimusha Warlords. Very, well, I wouldn't say very similar, but like similar enough. I would rate this above Onimusha. I'm assuming you're in agreement there.
Yeah.
So how much higher above Onimusha would you want to go?
For me, it kind of sits around between Killer 7 at 13 and probably The Beginner's Guide at 17. I'd say anywhere in there, I'd be happy with.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'd go above Beginner's Guide. I think I'd go above Ratchet and Clank. Like I have more. I feel like we always give Ratchet and Clank such a hard time, but I have so many more like memories from this game and like standout moments compared to Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah.
And like the satisfaction of as much as I moan about it, the inventory management and the puzzle solving and just the exploration and like them like not guiding you, just like apart from that very beginning bit that I mentioned and a few small moments, it's like here you are in this place, like good luck, go work it out. Like that is just fun. Like it's using the medium of video games in the way that I like, where it just like it lets you do it and it just lets you work it out. I probably wouldn't put it above Halo Infinite, so that's probably where I'd stop it.
I think I'm fine with that. I think 16 is fine for this game.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, it's fun to look back and, you know, there's a lot of great ideas on paper, but the reality of playing it in 2022 is pretty rough. You know, there's lots of things about it that are cool, like, you know, the puzzle, it kind of, I mean, it's a remake of the game that kind of pioneered the whole thing, the whole, you know, survival horror puzzle box like genre.
Yeah.
You know, and there's things about it as well that aren't necessarily talked about that I think are also quite cool, like the fact that you get stronger and the power level is like just right, that you're always kind of, you know, on the edge of being like the Terminator, but you're never quite there. Stuff like that's cool, but you know, the reality of it is 2022. It's pretty hard going.
I think I think it's still fun today. Like the camera stuff and that is like it's always a problem. Like you get used to it a bit, but it's always a hassle and could be better. But like I think it's good enough that it is still really good despite that. Like I would say that if you know have any interest in it from what we've heard, like I would recommend this game to people.
I would.
Know, with
too.
the caveat, like I
Yeah.
you know, I think it is flawed, but I think what is there is so good, like it kind of shines through the flaws.
It's just a shame that the flaw is about the main thing you spend 95%
yeah,
of the game
it's a shame that the flaw is like the camera and the controls.
Yeah,
like the gameplay is the flaw.
It's also reasonably difficult for me to comment on it because I've played it, this one, probably 4 or 5 times that I'm more or less used to moving around. Yeah. And even then, I'm still running backwards. Probably nowhere near as often as you, but I'm still running backwards. There's one camera angle in the Crow corridor. Every time it changed, I ran the wrong way. Like that U-shaped corridor.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think I know the one. I think I know.
When you get to the end where the painting is, it's just you run and you just run back again.
When you're trying to go back to like the stairway from like you've just done your item room and gone up the stairs and you're trying to get back to the main lobby. Like
But the thing is, it's also been surpassed by Resident Evil 2 Remake, which is much the same things that this game's good at, but it does them without that annoyance.
Yeah, and that game would probably be in my top 30 Resident Evil 2 Remake. Like it missed out on my top 20, but like I loved that game, and that is by far my favorite Resident Evil game. Like the only one that kind of comes close to like my favorite games. Because of what it is. Like I would love them to do that remake treatment to this. Like I think it's kind of like I know like people go like, oh, gonna remake it again, are you? Like, oh, running out of money, are you, Capcom? But like I think it's kind of weird that they did, when they did this big remake, they started with 2. Like,
yeah,
they could have done this one.
Maybe they'd have to change this one too much, because there is only about 8 zombies in the opening.
Oh yeah, but like think of how much they changed with like Resident Evil 2 Remake is quite a change from the Resident Evil 2.
Yeah, I wonder why they started with 2. Maybe it's because they wanted to do 4, and obviously Leon, they kind of wanted to remake that journey.
But I mean, like, you think like these sell really well, their modern ones. Like, why? You know, like they'll get there eventually. Like they don't, like they're not racing. Like,
yeah,
I think it will happen. What do you reckon the chances are? I've made a little note of this. Do you reckon they'll ever do like what Pokemon does, and you'd buy like the Chris version of the game and the Jill version? Like, because that feels like really horrible and annoying, but that feels like the sort of thing that that's the dystopian future we're heading into.
I don't say this often, and I'm trying not to be a fanboy, but I feel like Capcom have too much goodwill to do that.
You reckon?
Because they really struggled for a long time, and they've managed to claw it back, and I feel like, you know, the Resident Evil games been released have all been like critical successes. Street Fighter 6, they're the beta. People talking about beta, they're like, this could be game of the year, which is crazy for a fighting game. I feel like maybe they have too much goodwill to do that. Yeah. Do you know what they might do is release it with Chris, and then you have to buy the Jill DLC.
Yeah.
That's how they do it.
I feel like they could argue away, like wrongly. Like you're getting still basically all the just do the Pokemon thing. Like you're still getting the game, and because they know most people won't. Most people will buy one, but they know there's some people will buy both just because they have to. Which I think is why it's extra bad, is because it's like punishing the really hardcore fans and making them the people who just can't resist. They want both boxes on their shelf or whatever it is, or like to see the 3% differences between them.
And the other thing is like I worry about the Resident Evil 4 remake, because that game had a lot of content, and I don't see in 2023 that they're going to release it all for free, because it had like the story mode, then it had Ada's side story, then it had Ada's story mode, so that was another 5 chapters, then it had mercenaries as well, there was like costumes, unlockable weapons. There's no way all that's going to be included again.
No, but you can kind of understand why, like the cost of development, the way it's gone up. Like I think you'll get the main game, I think, is the main thing. Probably mercenaries as well, but the other stuff I doubt you'll get that as well.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, so it's hard for me to comment on the movement because I'm just kind of used to it. I could imagine saying to people, "Oh, have you played Resident Evil Remake?" And they go, "Oh no, the controls are wonky," and then that'd be the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
I can imagine that.
Do you know what? This is one of the great things about this podcast is it forces me to finish games. Because let's say if this game popped up on Game Pass and like I knew it was very celebrated, I might have tried it out on a whim. And if I had the first impression of the game, which I had here, I would have probably stopped playing. Like if it's on game, like if I hadn't bought it, like I'd have probably been like, "Oh no, it's one of not for me." But like I had to finish it for the podcast, and by the end, like my view of it like changed so much, compared to how it started. But yeah, well done, Resident Evil. 16 on the list. As I say, we now have 25 entries, so pretty decent placement for it. There's only like 3 bad games on our entire list, so it's doing okay.
Yeah. I do feel a bit bad for Enslaved, but it wasn't good, was it?
No, but once again, like I finished it because of doing the podcast, and it has a bunch of merits. It has a bunch of stuff that it does well, but it's where it belongs.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, cool. Should we quickly run through what's coming up?
Yeah, go for it.
So this episode's out on October 21. So happy Halloween if you're listening. Then next time for our 1-year anniversary, can you believe it's actually going to be Beyond Good and Evil. It's coming out on November 4th. That's available on your Xbox and your PC. Then we have Skyrim with a guest on November 18th. And then we have Frog Month.
Of course.
Which we unveiled last week, but we kind of unveiled it for the first time in front of someone.
Everybody, Merry Frog Month!
Merry Frog Month, everybody. Just be aware of what's happening. We've got 2 frog-based games. Frog Detective, December 2nd, and Kero Blaster, December 16th. I just picked up Kero Blaster for about £3 on the Switch.
Yeah, so I did as well. You messaged me about the sale and I nabbed it as well.
Yeah. Are we stopping there? Because we do have 2 more.
Yeah, we'll stop there because there's...
Okay.
I do a little tease. People can feel free to guess in the comments. There's a game that is scheduled to be coming out in December, but they don't have a firm release date yet that we're going to be wanting to play in January. But we don't want to commit to it yet because I feel like this game might get delayed. So let's not go any further. We also just secured... beyond our Skyrim guest, we've secured 2 other guests for next year. And so... so that's quite exciting because, we're quite happy with some of the people we got coming up. So definitely stay tuned. Quite reasonably happy.
Tepid expectations.
I am beyond excited about our future guests.
Yeah, nice one. Also, because I haven't done this in ages, I'm going to do it now. We are on Twitter, @TheBonusPoints. Instagram @TheBonusPoints, TikTok, even if you want to see your boys dancing. We're not dancing on there, but we're on TikTok.
Wait till the next green screen video, Ollie. It's your turn to be up in front of the green screen.
@TheBonusPoints YT on TikTok. YouTube, we also managed to get @TheBonusPoints, which is great. And also twitch.tv/TheBonusPoints. We're everywhere. You can't get rid of us.
as hard as you try.
Also, we'll always be there.
There's been loads of other. If you only just listen to the audio version of this, we've had a bunch of videos up on YouTube recently. A lot of kind of funny, silly ones that we always say are one-off and then end up doing more of them because they ended up being fun. So there's going to be more of those coming out. And I mentioned it briefly earlier. We have a 4-part series of us counting down our top 20 games of all time personally. It's one of the things that people always ask us about because we've kind of mentioned about like, it's one of my top 10 of all time. We're putting our money where our mouths are and actually going through and locking down lists of our favourite games. So if you want to check those out, they'll be kind of just gradually popping up once a week.
Yeah, nice one. I guess that's everything.
Yeah, that's it. So thank you, everyone, for either watching or listening. Join us in the next episode where, as I say, we're going to be doing Beyond Good and Evil. It was free on Xbox a while ago, so maybe check through because you might already own it. Because it was on Games of Gold or something.
I don't.
Yeah, if you've been keeping up with that, you may already own it and be able to play it for free. If not, it's a very easy game to get hold of. They did a HD remake of it. Make sure you're playing that version, not the original.
Here's something unusual. What are you thinking going in? Because obviously you've only just started it. So I want to know what's your impression from what you've heard? What are you expecting?
So I played a demo of it back on the PlayStation 2, and in that demo, all I remember was I was I was going around on a little boat, and so that's what I had. And I knew you took pictures of things. That's what I knew.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the key mechanics. And then just everyone loved it was kind of a cult classic. It's kind of our remit here on the podcast is beloved cult classics. And then obviously there's a fun story about, well, I don't know if it's fun, but a story about the sequel that's forever been made and never getting released and has some weird development stuff going on. So I thought it'd be a fun discussion. I've no nostalgia or anything for it. I just know it was meant to be a great game back in the day. It passed me by, so I thought we'd give it a go.
I hope it's good. That's all I can say. Is I really hope it's good. I don't know. All I know is the main character has a stick and it's got a pig in it.
Do you know what it's going to be?
Anything else about it?
It's going to be beyond good. That's what it's going. That's what it's going to be, Ollie.
And evil.
I was like, I'm early on. I don't know whether it's good or not yet. So
it is. It's just giving me Enslaved vibes. I'm worried about it.
Yeah. I kind of see that because Enslaved was a very similar thing of a beloved game that passed me by. I'd say that it's got a strong opening. It's definitely got a strong opening. So I'm looking forward to playing more of it, but I've only played it for about an hour. But yeah, that's coming up soon. So if you want to play it, feel free to play it. If not, join us in 2 weeks where we're going to be discussing it and breaking it all down for you. But apart from that, thank you all so much for watching or listening, and we'll see you all in the next one. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.